June 1944. Allied tanks are dying in the hedgerows of Normandy. Thousands of soldiers are trapped. And the German defenses? They were built with steel obstacles designed by Rommel himself. But one American sergeant is about to turn Rommel's greatest weapon into his own. The invasion of Normandy wasn't won on D-Day. The real nightmare began in the bocage, ancient French farmland divided by massive earthen walls topped with thick hedges. These weren't normal hedges. They were centuries-old barriers, some 12 feet high, with roots like iron cables. And Rommel knew this landscape would be the Allies' graveyard. He flooded the fields, he fortified every gap, and then he did something brilliant. He took the steel beach obstacles that didn't stop the D-Day landings, and had his men repurpose them into anti-tank defenses throughout the bocage. Problem intensifies 110. When American Sherman tanks tried to climb these hedgerows, they exposed their thin belly armor. German gunners just waited. One shot, one kill. Tank after tank burned. The infantry couldn't advance without armor. The armor couldn't advance through the hedgerows. And every day the breakout stalled, more German reinforcements arrived. Eisenhower's staff scrambled for solutions. Engineers designed elaborate bridge layers. Expensive prototypes were shipped from England. None of them worked. Meanwhile, men kept dying. Enter the hero, 2 o'clock. Curtis G. Cullen was a cab driver from New York. Now he was a sergeant in the 102nd Cavalry Reconnaissance Squadron, and he was tired of watching his friends burn alive. Cullen wasn't an engineer. He had no formal training, but he had something more valuable. He actually listened to the tank crews, and he noticed something everyone else missed. Those German beach obstacles, that Rommel steel, it was everywhere, literally scattered across every field the Allies had taken. The idea, 235. One night, Cullen grabbed some scrap metal. He welded together a set of prongs, like giant tusks, designed to mount on the front of a Sherman tank. The idea was simple but revolutionary. Instead of climbing over the hedgerow, cut through it. The prongs would bite into the earth and roots, the tank's weight would drive them deeper, and the Sherman would rip through the hedgerow at ground level, keeping its armor angled down, staying protected. His fellow soldiers thought he was crazy. "Sarge, that'll never work." But Cullen convinced his commanding officer to let him try. The test, 320. They mounted the device on a Sherman. The tank rolled toward a hedgerow that had stopped 3 previous assaults, gunned the engine, hit the wall, and tore through it like paper. The hedge exploded in a shower of dirt and branches. The Sherman emerged on the other side, guns blazing, belly armor never exposed. The German position didn't even have time to react. Within hours, every officer in the vicinity wanted to see this thing. Within days, Omar Bradley, commanding general of all U.S. ground forces in Normandy, was standing in that field. Bradley immediately saw what this meant. He ordered every available welder to start producing these devices. But there was a problem. Where do you get enough steel to outfit thousands of tanks? Then someone remembered. Rommel's beach obstacles. The very steel defenses that were supposed to stop the invasion were still sitting on the beaches. Miles and miles of it. Within 2 weeks, 3/5 of all American tanks in Normandy were equipped with what soldiers started calling rhino tanks, or Cullen hedgerow cutters. And they used Rommel's own steel to build them. Operation Cobra, launched on July 25, 1944. This was the big breakout offensive. And this time, the hedgerows didn't stop anyone. Rhino tanks punched through the bocage like they were built for it. German defenders, who'd spent weeks preparing perfect ambush positions, suddenly found American armor appearing from impossible angles. The positions that should have held for months collapsed in days. The Wehrmacht called it the Brown Wave, a flood of American tanks that simply couldn't be stopped anymore. Cullen's invention had broken the stalemate. Within weeks, Allied forces broke out of Normandy entirely. The race across France began. Paris would be liberated by August. You'd think Curtis Cullen became a household name, right? Think again. The invention was so successful that the army brass wanted to take credit. Some reports tried to attribute the design to ordnance officers. Others claimed it was a collaborative effort by multiple engineering units. But the tankers knew the truth, and Bradley knew the truth. Cullen was eventually awarded the Legion of Merit, a significant honor, but hardly proportional to the impact of his innovation. He saved thousands of lives. He broke the Normandy stalemate. He shortened the war in Western Europe. And he did it with nothing but observation, scrap metal, and the determination not to watch one more tank burn. Here's what makes this story incredible. The biggest innovations in war often don't come from laboratories or general staffs. They come from the people actually fighting, the ones who see the problem up close, who can't afford to wait for the proper solution. Cullen's hedgerow cutter wasn't elegant. It wasn't sophisticated. It was welded together scrap metal. And in war, working is all that matters. The German defenders never adapted. They'd spent months perfecting their hedgerow tactics, so confident in Rommel's defensive vision that they couldn't imagine it being defeated by something so simple. By the time they realized what was happening, it was too late. Rommel's irony, 725. And Rommel himself, by the time the Rhino tanks were ripping through Normandy, he was already gone, wounded in an Allied air attack, then forced to commit suicide by Hitler after being implicated in the July 20th assassination plot. He never knew that his Atlantic Wall obstacles, his brilliant beach defenses, ended up as the very tools that broke his hedgerow fortress. The steel that was supposed to stop the Allies at the waterline instead carried them across France. There's a lesson buried in that irony. No defense is permanent, no advantage lasts forever, and the side that adapts fastest usually wins, even if the adaptation comes from a cab driver with a welding torch. Aftermath 810. After the war, Cullen went back to New York, back to a normal life. He rarely talked about his invention. No parades, no monuments, just the quiet knowledge that he'd changed history. The Army kept using hedgerow cutters in various forms for decades. Modern combat engineering still studies the Bocage campaign as a lesson in battlefield innovation. But if you ask most people about Normandy, they'll tell you about D-Day, maybe Operation Cobra, but they won't know the name Curtis Cullen. Fast forward to today, we see the same pattern in Ukraine, in Syria. Wherever modern wars are fought, the most effective solutions often come from soldiers improvising in the field, not from defense contractors or Pentagon planning committees. Drone warfare started with commercial quadcopters and improvised munitions. Electronic warfare tactics developed by troops who needed to stop enemy drones and didn't have official equipment. The pattern repeats, because the people closest to the problem understand it in ways that rear echelon planners never will. Cullen proved that in 1944, and soldiers prove it again every single day. But here's what really gets me about this story. Cullen didn't do this for glory. He didn't do it for promotion. He did it because he was watching his friends die, and he refused to accept it. That's the real heart of innovation under pressure. Not genius, not inspiration, just someone who cares enough to refuse the unacceptable, and stubborn enough to keep trying until something works. How many times did that first prototype fail before it succeeded? We don't know. Cullen never said. How many designs did he sketch and discard? How many nights did he polish, spend in some field workshop, welding and rewelding, while other soldiers told him he was wasting his time? We don't know, because he didn't keep track. He just kept working until the problem was solved. The Forgotten Heroes, 1010. And here's the thing that bothers me most. For every Curtis Cullen whose name we know, there are probably 100 we don't. 100 field innovations that saved lives and changed battles, credited to no one or to the wrong people. The Marine who figured out a better way to clear bunkers on Tarawa. The British tanker who discovered a tactic that reduced casualties in North Africa. The Soviet soldier who improvised a defense that held Stalingrad one more day. History forgets most of them. We remember the generals. We remember the grand strategies. But wars are won by people like Cullen, people who see a problem and fix it, whether or not anyone's watching. Think about the perfect symmetry of this for a moment. Rommel was considered one of the greatest military minds of World War II. The Desert Fox, master of mobile warfare, Strategic genius. He personally designed the Atlantic Wall beach obstacles. He personally chose to fortify the bocage. He created a defensive system that should have been impenetrable. And a cab driver from New York defeated it, using Rommel's own materials. Not with a better strategy, not with superior firepower, just by looking at the same problem everyone else saw and thinking, what if we went through instead of over? This is why I love this story. It's not really about tanks or hedgerows or World War II. It's about the fact that expertise can become blindness, that sophistication can become fragility, that sometimes the simplest solution is the one no one considered because it seemed too obvious. How many problems in your life have complicated expert solutions that don't work, while the simple fix sits right in front of you? How many times do we overthink ourselves into paralysis when we should just try something? Cullen didn't wait for permission. He didn't wait for the engineers to figure it out. He saw the problem, grabbed some scrap metal, and started welding. And that urgency, that bias toward action, saved thousands of lives. The hedgerows of Normandy are still there, by the way. You can visit them, walk the same fields where those battles happened. Some of them still have marks from tank tracks, shell craters hidden under decades of growth. And if you look hard enough, in the right museums, you can see a Cullen hedgerow cutter, rusty steel prongs, crude welds, nothing fancy. It doesn't look like something that changed history, but it did. Because history isn't just changed by the famous and powerful. It's changed by ordinary people who refuse to accept the unacceptable, by cab drivers who become sergeants, by welders who become innovators, by anyone who sees a problem and decides, I'm going to fix this. Curtis Cullen beat Rommel's hedgerows using Rommel's own steel, not because he was smarter than everyone else, not because he had better resources, but because he was there, he cared, and he refused to stop trying. The next time someone tells you a problem is unsolvable, remember the hedgerows, remember the rhino tanks, remember that sometimes the greatest victories come from the most unexpected places. And remember Curtis Cullen, the cab driver who changed the course of World War II with nothing but scrap metal and determination.